Hello and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Saturday, June 2nd, 2018, and this is episode 62. My name is Carol and I am known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry. The show notes for this and every episode can be found on the blog and also in the episode thread in the Ravelry group. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so via private message on Ravelry or by leaving me a comment on YouTube, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. Yes, you heard right, it is Saturday. I very rarely record on a Saturday, but I've been trying to find time all week and it just hasn't worked out. So my husband's at work today. My son is home, but he's in his room on his computer, and I thought I should probably take advantage of this little block of time. So it's Saturday morning. I usually record in the afternoon. This is in my craft room. Again, it's from the opposite side, but the window's there. I have a light there and I have my overhead light, so I'm hoping the lighting will be decent. It's kind of a mixed sun and cloud type of day out there, so not super bright. And normally I get the afternoon sun in this room, which gives me a lot more light. So hopefully this all works for you. Fair warning, I may receive a phone call during recording. Not that it will interrupt you too much, but you may hear the phone ring. That's partly why I thought I'll try and squeeze this in now. May have the electrician coming over sometime today to scope up what we would like to do with our deck, with the lighting and electrical there. So yeah, let's jump in here. I have several works in progress. I have a couple of sewing finished projects, and I'll talk a little bit about what's coming up and also what's been going on, what in part has prevented me from podcasting earlier this week as I had hoped. So yeah, settle in. Let's get started. So my first work in progress, I showed you the yarn for this last week. It is this orange tonal yarn. It is Ancient Arts merino nylon fingering sock weight, and it's part of their Meow collection. This colorway is called Orange Tabby. And they have a Meow collection, and I can't remember what the one to do with dogs is, but a portion of the proceeds from the yarn sales goes to animal charities. So I am knitting these socks for my brother-in-law, Ed, in honor of his cat, Misha, who is obviously an orange tabby. So when I showed them to you, showed you the yarn last week, I wasn't sure if I was going to do a patterned sock or a plain stockinette sock. I sort of thought I should probably put some patterning in there because I thought just knitting more or less plain yarn might be a little bit too boring for me and not keep my interest. So I did settle on, just going to see if there's anything you can't see on here. I'm knitting Ethos by Kawa, how do you say that? I don't know. Kawa Coffee. I can say it in my head how I think it should sound, but it doesn't come out of my lips the same way. And it's a textured sock. So part of the reason I chose this pattern, I'll show it to you here. I've got the ribbing done and one pattern repeat done on each sock. So you can see it's kind of a diamond shaped pattern here. So my brother-in-law and I are going to trade some skills. And so I asked him, I had something I wanted him to do for me, and I asked him what it would cost because it's a well, I guess I could tell you. One thing I want to do is get a logo for my podcast. And my brother-in-law is a graphic designer. So I asked him what he would charge me to do that. And he said, a pair of felted slippers. I said, seriously? Because I could do that, no problem. And then I know I've talked about potentially opening up an Etsy store and selling my project bags that I sew. So he also is going to help me work out a logo for that. And so because I had both, I said, well, I'll do slippers and a pair of socks. So that made me feel a little bit better. So one thing, we were discussing the slippers. I was asking him what colors he'd like and such. And he was asking if it was possible to do some kind of design on them. And he had a pair of slippers, I guess, that were like argyle that he thought were great. And I thought, well, not really. But I thought I could find sort of an argyle inspired design for the socks. So he'll get a little argyle, just not in the slippers, and there, that's for him. So I have not, as you can see, have not done a ton on these because I got distracted by, frankly, more enjoyable projects. But I kind of have a timeline. My sister Jacqueline, Ed's wife, is coming out again to BC at the beginning of July, so about a month from now. So I'm going to aim to finish these socks and the slippers to be able to send back home with her. So yeah, there's my first project, such as it is. Just going to take a quick sip of tea here. It's a little Irish breakfast, seeing as it's morning. So my next project, I'm just going to bend down and grab it here. I decided, rather than cast on a pair of plain stockinette socks, that I would pull out my Birkin, which was had knit partway down the body, and use that as my stockinette project. So Birkin, I'm sure you're all familiar, by Caitlin Hunter. And so I did, again, sorry, moving out of the shot. I finished the body, and I've now moved on to the sleeves, which I am knitting 2 at a time concurrently. So the yarn, sorry, again, there's a bag down here, I have to reach for it. Yarn is Blacker Swan 4-ply, and this is the main color that I'm knitting here is Stone. That's the grayish beigey color there. This is what I have left for each sleeve. You can see it's not very much. I've talked about this before. I've said that I more or less am going to knit the sleeves as long as I can. The pattern itself is a 3/4 length sleeve, but I would prefer a full length sleeve just because I'm more likely to wear it like that. And I had tried to get another skein of this yarn, and there was only available at the time in one place, and between ordering it and the shipping from England, it was just astronomical, and I thought there's just no way I could justify it. So when I started on the sleeves, I think it was last Sunday or something, and I thought, I'm just gonna why not see if Blacker Yarns has more of this in stock? So I can feel a little tickle in my throat. I'm just gonna cough. Sorry if you have earbuds in. Anyway, I thought, well, why not check and see if they have any more? Well, as it turned out, they had one more. They have one skein in stock. Maybe it was returned or something. And I decided to go ahead and order it. Now, again, if I had just ordered that skein plus the shipping, it turned out to be a lot of money. But I ordered some yarn I've had my eye on for a while, and thought it would be a good time to do it. So I can't even remember. Doesn't matter. I'll show it to you when it comes in, and plus the pattern that I plan to make from it. So yeah, the name of the yarn has escaped me. But anyway, so I have another skein of this coming. I believe that with that skein I will be able to achieve full-length sleeves, so I'm hopeful about that. In the meantime, I'm very happy with how this fits, and it's a nice long length. I have a long torso, so I tend to knit my sweaters longer than indicated, usually by about an inch anyway. And this one actually I think is slightly cropped, so I definitely don't do cropped well. So yeah, I've been just picking this up when I need some quick stockinette work, and gradually I'll work my way down the sleeves, and hopefully by the time that the yarn arrives I will be ready for it. I realized not just on Birkin but on a number of my projects I'm behind on photos and notes. When I finish Birkin, I do intend to write some pretty detailed notes about how I modified the yoke to better fit my body. If you have not been watching before, well, first of all, welcome. Thanks for joining me, trying me out. A lot of people have had issues with how this sweater fits, and I realized that on my first go round, besides being too tight around the yoke section, it was also too long, and so I reknit it with a larger size yoke, and I split for the sleeves midway through this leaf section. There's a solid line of green that runs down the middle of this, like that depicts the stem, and I split the yoke on that, or split for the sleeves on that line, and configured it in such a way that I had enough, the right number of stitches to carry the patterning around the sleeves and the body. And then I did not increase for the body the same way that was indicated for my size, so that I've ended up with a more fitted body. And then I have done waist shaping decreases and then increases for the hip area, and then I just ended with about an inch of ribbing on the bottom, and I'll do the same on the sleeve. So I'm very happy with how it fits. I think the modifications have worked very well, and maybe will be helpful for someone else who's struggling to get that sweater to fit the way they would like. But yes, I have not written out exactly what I've done yet, and I do need to get to that. So another project that I've been working on this week is a new one. It's the Drawing Board Shawl by Sylvia Harding, and I did show this pattern off last week. It is a long bias knit asymmetrical shawl, and I had a real struggle choosing a yarn for this, partly because of the amounts that I needed. Some of the color scheme choices I had were not, I didn't have enough yarn. And then it does show, or it does have an option of putting beads along this picot bind off edge. And so that also further limited my choice because I only had beads that matched a couple of yarns. Just trying to see where I put it. So what I ended up settling on are a couple of skeins of Malabrigo sock, and I had this skein of just natural, that's color 63, and then my daughter Jessica had given me this skein of Solace, which is color 809, for Christmas, and she had given me just grab them here, these beads to go along with it. And so they're a little bit larger than you might normally use for this weight of yarn. I think these are 4s, and I think usually you would use a 6 on a fingering, but I thought if it was in the border of the picot, then that would be fine. And so that's what I decided on. And I've got actually a fair bit done so far, so I'll show it to you from end to end. Let me just get it going here. So the first section is this garter stitch, and I actually did it opposite than they said. The pattern said that they used more of the light colored yarn than the dark, and I had more of the dark, so I decided to start with green. I'm just trying to think. I better go. I'm trying to find out which is the. Oh, I guess this is the right way. You know, upside down, or right side up. So there's the thing. And look how what a nice edge it has on it. It's like an I-cord edge, and it's just done in a really nice way. And one of the suggestions was to wrap this side. Do an extra yarn over before you do the I-cord edge, and then drop the yarn over on your return row. Oh, there's that phone call possibly. I will be back. That was actually my husband. He doesn't, I usually let him know when I'm recording, so he doesn't phone, but I neglected to do that. Anyway, yeah, so I was talking about this edge. It's just with that extra yarn over, it gives a nice stretchy edge to it. So it's really pretty how this yarn's knitting up. I think you can see in the camera, it's kind of a mix of green and blue. It's really pretty. And so then the next section is this garter and lace and slipped stitches. So this one is done by beginning the pattern with the natural color. So that's how it looks when it's done that way. Then there is a stretch of just plain natural garter stitch. Now you can see the difference. The natural yarn is a little bit thinner than the dyed yarn, and you can probably tell that garter is looser than it is here. Hopefully you can. I don't know how it's going to block out. I don't know if the natural will bloom a little bit when it's blocked, but in any case, it is what it is. I can't change that. And then there's another section with this stitch pattern, and you can see that it looks, because it began with the green, you can see that even though it's the same stitch pattern, the natural is more dominant on this one, and the green is more dominant on that one. So there you go. And now I'm back into a green garter stitch section. And it is then broken by some eyelets striping here, and then more garter, and then there is another lace pattern that's ended with. So mine will end with the natural here. So yeah, happy with how that's coming along. It was a good project to work on while I was anticipating the release of the Shawl Society 3 first pattern in that collection, which did happen a couple of days ago, and so I did cast on for that. So that'll be my next project I show you. But first I'll just give you maybe a better overview, there we go, of how that looks. So I really like this shape of shawl, and I love this green. My daughter had me pegged there, so I think it's going to be really pretty when it's done. Nice with my black jacket. The winter, I think it'll look good. So, stay. Yes, so as mentioned, the first shawl was released in Helen Stewart's Shawl, that's like a tongue twister, Shawl Society 3, and it's called the Maytham Shawl, which I didn't realize. It's been ages since I read The Secret Garden, which is what this whole collection is inspired by. But apparently I can't remember if she said the actual house that was based on it. Yeah, it's the real name, Maytham. is the real Maytham Hall. Great Maytham Hall was the author of The Secret Garden, moved into it. Frances Hodgson Burnett. She had moved into Great Maytham Hall, and then she used that as inspiration for her novel, and the fictional name is Misselthwaite Manor. So I was really excited to see that the first shawl was a half pie, because I love knitting those. And look how pretty. You can see this gray panel is meant to sort of mimic the architecture of the hall. And then there's some texture in, let's see if I can, right in here. And then also in this part before the border, there's some textured reverse stocking stitch with twisted lines of twisted stitches running up. Now, the pattern uses just over 1.5 skeins of one color of fingering, and then about 2/3 of a skein for this gray section. I have very few, in very few cases do I have 2 skeins of the same fingering weight yarn, unless I have 3 skeins, in which case I want to save them for a sweater lot. So I didn't have much choice when it came to choosing yarns for this shawl, and I had pulled out a few possibilities, but then once the pattern was released and I could see that you really want a semi-solid or tonal yarn for this section in order to make that pattern stand out, then I was really limited, because one of the a couple of the possibilities I had were sort of plain yarns with variegated contrast, and it really wouldn't have worked. So I decided that I could use, well, first choice was going to use a couple of different yarns plus a set of minis that I had. And actually I'm going to grab them. They're up there because I do want to show you what I was going to do. So pardon me while I move out of the frame. And I'm not going far. Whoops, now I'm going to probably fall over as I go. Luckily, I could edit that out if I wanted. So my first idea was to use this skein of Sweet Georgia Tough Love Sock. This is the Anthem colorway. And I had bought this skein of London Fog, same yarn, in the London Fog colorway, after seeing these 2 yarns plus another color recommended for a Sweet Georgia project. And they really do go, these 2 really do go together really nicely. So I thought, well, this would be great for the variegated, this would be great for that panel, but then I didn't have enough of this skein to do all of the variegated areas on the pattern. So I thought what I needed was another yarn to add in. And I've shown this before because I've keep trying to use this Party of 5 set in the Honey Fig colorway, and 4 out of the 5 colors go really well with this Anthem yarn. So I'll just pull them out so you can see. I've used these before unsuccessfully, and so I have all these little balls of the yarn left that I've sort of reclaimed. So you can see that these 4 go really well with this yarn. So I was trying to think of a way that I might incorporate these 4 colors of mini skeins into this shawl. And I thought that I could do this textured area up here in one color, perhaps add another color here before the gray, and then somehow incorporate 2 colors here before doing the border in the variegated. And I even started to knit this first bit with the this color. raspberry. It's quite a contrast, and as I just had so much uncertainty about it. And I ultimately decided that with all those stripes, it was just going to be too busy and it would take away from the simplicity and sort of elegance of the design. And so I happen to have bought for a different project. Hang on, I'm trying to wrangle these. I had purchased a skein of this shade, which is ultraviolet, for a different project, but I decided to pull it out and use it for this one because they really do go together very nicely. And I thought that it would be, like I say, elegant, preserve the elegance of this design and not be overly busy. So what I've decided to do is knit the first part of the shawl as written, and then I did that textured section in the ultraviolet. And I'm hoping you can see, I think with the light, you can see that texture design. So I've just done the second to last increase of stitches. And there's a few more rows to go before knitting this gray section, which is what I will use the London Fog for. And then I'm going to, I believe my plan is to stripe, do a little bit of the anthem, do the next textured pattern stitch in the ultraviolet again, and then another thin stripe of the anthem, and then do the border also in the ultraviolet. So the variegated will appear mainly up in this top section with a little bit down here to tie them together. But then that way this gray will really stand out as it's supposed to. And I think it'll be quite striking with the dark border. So that I've been enjoying after I finally made up my mind what I wanted to do. Because I had a lot of mixed feelings and second thoughts. And, you know, do you ever get stuck on a project you can't go further because you just can't make up your mind? That's how it was. So I really dithered a lot about what to do as far as my yarn choices went. But I like how this looks, and I think I will be happy with it in the end, and I should have enough of all the yarns. Of course, that's another consideration. I had to keep in mind how much yarn was I using up for each section and would I have enough. And I also believe that I'll have enough left over of all of them that I could somehow incorporate into another pattern with these minis. So one way or another, I'm going to end up using these, but just not how I'd originally planned, and then plan B. And yeah, so eventually I'll find a way to use those yarns by hook or by crook. So that is it for my knitting. I'm just going to pause here because my sewing is right there, but I have things piled on top of it from this part of the podcast. So I'll be right back. So the first thing that I finished as far as sewing goes is just a project bag. Looks a lot like others I've sewn. I'm always experimenting, and so the this style of project bag that I have made so far, I have used either like a polyester batting type of thing inside to give it some body, and this time I just tried just plain interfacing to see how that would stand up, and it didn't stick very well. The interfacing was not gluing very well. It was like fusible. So I guess I could say it wasn't fusing very well. and it doesn't really give it tons of body, so I think I will continue to use the quilt batting. I find that's the easiest to work with, and then I do sometimes do some quilting in the top areas. So anyway, this will be mine. So I have lots of experiments. So it's got just a light blue lining with the pocket made out of the same fabric as the top. So that's just another experiment. And I don't know why I had so much trouble getting this zipper in this time. I basted and rebasted, and it was kind of a real nuisance and took me far too long to complete. But I do like the fabrics together. It kind of reminds me sort of country-ish, you know, like as in denim, and this pattern just reminds me of a country type of theme. So then the thing that I took most of my time for sewing this week, my niece is having a baby in the fall, and a good friend of mine, her daughter's having a baby in early July. So I wanted to make my niece a true baby quilt, as in pieced and cut and pieced and sewn together. And I had some fabrics that my mom had given me years ago, I think when my kids were small. And so I thought, well, maybe there's some of those fabrics I could use in my niece's quilt. So I pulled them out, and it really wasn't going to work. But there were two lengths that I thought they went well together, and I thought, you know, I could just put them together for a little blanket. And so this one had all these squares on it. So I thought I could just put that as the front, and then this one as the back. See how well let's see if I can flip it. See, they match really well color-wise. And then, so I just put a layer of batting in between the two fabrics, and I just proceeded to stitch around all of the squares. And then I visited my local fabric store and found this binding that, again, picked up the turquoise on both sides. And so, yeah, it's not a full-size baby quilt, and but would be good for you know, a car seat or stroller, or just putting baby on the floor. I'm just gonna put my chair back and stand up so you can get a better idea. Now, something I realized once I had originally thought maybe I would do this quilt for my friend's baby or granddaughter or grandson, but then I realized that some areas this fabric wasn't printed very well. See how there's no line all the way around? They're supposed to be, and in some places it's very faded. This, I believe, is supposed to be all yellow gingham here, the way it is here. So I thought, when I saw that, I thought, no, I can't give that as a gift to my friend's daughter. But I thought my niece would appreciate that the fabrics came originally from her grandmother, and that I put it together for her. So I think it's really nice. So my daughter has knit her a baby blanket, and her friend has been crocheting her a baby blanket. So I've sort of I've thought that maybe I won't do another real quilt for her, that maybe I'm better off just knitting a baby sweater or something. Actually, the Yarn Harlot had knit these monster pants. I'll try to remember to put a link in the show notes, and that would be just the kind of thing my niece would get a real bang out of. So that's what I might do, is get some yarn and knit a pair of monster pants for her baby. But aren't these cute? I thought they were just, you can just tell they're like really vintagey, right? Like just the style of them. Little guy barbecuing. Anyway, I just thought this was really fun fabric, and I just love how well it goes with this print. So yeah, so I was enjoyed putting that together. Just basically, it took me a day, part of a day to lay it all out, baste it together, do the sewing around all the squares, and then the next day I went and picked up the fabric for the binding, and that just took a little while that day. So what I've decided to do while I was at the shop buying the fabric for the binding, I noticed that they had a number of different quilt panels for baby quilts, and so I thought that would be a good idea to do for my friend's daughter. So I ended up settling on this one. Again, I'll just step back so you can see it. Kind of a jungle theme, and they know that they're having a boy. Actually, it's really sad. Her daughter was actually pregnant with twins, a boy and a girl, and unfortunately they lost the girl. But she is having a boy, so I thought this was fun, nice and bright. And then I bought the matching fabric for the backing. See the line there. And then I bought some green just to do a binding with, because I wasn't sure how to finish this edge otherwise, because I'm going to be sewing them together. So I thought that that went really well, and I'll just do a narrow quilted or a narrow binding edge for that, so that'll match. So probably start that this week, and again I'll just put the fabrics together, and then I'll just basically quilt around the various animals and things, and that should hold the two layers together just fine. I love this snake here. Isn't that cute? So yeah, I'm looking forward now to jumping in on that one. It still doesn't scratch the itch of making an actual baby quilt, because I do have a book that has some different quilts using, what are they called? The charm packs. And I really would like to do it. I just haven't, I just don't know who to make one for. So, and when you put that much time and expense, I want it to be someone who, you know, is really close to the family. So maybe another of my nieces or nephews. I have one nephew that's engaged to be married, and no doubt they'll have kids fairly soon, I would think, just knowing them. So maybe that's what I'll do, is just do one up in advance and have it on hand for when one of my family members has another baby. We're in that stage now of things where our kids are starting to have kids, so it's kind of cool. So yeah, so that's what's up and coming as far as sewing goes. And then on Monday is the release of the third pattern in the Handmade Sock Society by Helen Stewart. So I'm looking ahead to that. She did give us a sneak peek of the yarn she used. So again, I'm just going to wait until I see the pattern to really give real conscious thought to the yarn, because it's you can choose all the yarns in the world that you like in advance, but without seeing the pattern, it can be really hard to know if it's the right choice. So I'll just wait till we get the pattern, and then I'll decide on what yarn I want to use. So that brings us, well, okay, there's no reading this week. I don't think I read one page of a book, so no, what am I reading this week? So as you can see, I've been doing a fair bit of crafting. My days have been kind of out of the routine, because we've continued to have our friend coming to work on our deck. So last time I recorded, I think all the footings had been done, and we are awaiting delivery of wood the next morning. So it did show up bright and early, and weren't able to get it into the backyard with the forklift, but so they put it beside our driveway, and then my husband and I, by hand, carried it all to the backyard, and our friend showed up just as we were finishing that off, so he carried a few boards. So they're pretty heavy. A lot of them were. It's all treated lumber, and it's not as heavy as it is, and then long lengths, like 16-foot lengths, most of them, between the parts that are being used for the actual frame and then the decking itself. So it was hot, sweaty, hard work. I didn't feel like I needed to go for a walk that day. I definitely got my exercise, helping to move the lumber. And so since then, the framing has pretty well all been finished, and the next step is to get any electrical done before the actual decking boards go on the top. Yesterday, we had bought some cone face, it's called, to go around the edge of the deck. So we got that on I guess Thursday, and then I painted it between Thursday and yesterday, and then it all got put on yesterday. So I'll show you a couple pictures of the footings and then the framing, how it looks now. So quite excited at the idea of getting actual decking on it now that we can see the shape that it's going to take. Yeah, pretty excited. We were kind of debating what to do for lighting, if we should bother putting any lights underneath. On the part of the deck involves is being covered by the deck that's upstairs, and so we're trying to decide whether we put some lighting in it. And then a friend of mine came up with an idea of putting actually a fan. I think she was kind of joking at the time about getting a fan that looks like the palm fronds, right, and having a real tropical feel. But then it got us thinking that maybe a ceiling fan wouldn't be a bad idea. It would, on a hot day, would get the air moving, make kind of a nice, cool place to sit. And someone else told me a tip that to help prevent mosquitoes around you is to have fans blowing. So I don't know if that's true, but definitely worth a try. So we did actually yesterday, we found an outdoor fan that has looks like wooden palm leaves on it. So it has that bit of a tropical feel. So when the electrician comes, he can let us know if it's actually feasible to run. There's a outdoor plug in that area, and we're going to see if we can tap off it and put a couple of more outlets to use for things like patio lights if we want to plug that in, and also to see if we can wire in this light. So cross fingers, and this light and this fan. So cross fingers that all works out, because I think that would be a good addition to the deck. If not, and then we also have little lights that we're putting in the stairs just for safety, that when it's evening and the lights will come on so people can actually see where the steps leading off it are. We had been at my brother-in-law and sister-in-law's place. They have an outdoor deck that has 2 levels to it, and I got up at one point to go inside and stepped really hard off the step from one level to another, because in the dark I didn't even know it was there, and I thought, that's just crazy. We really do need lights for safety. I don't want someone twisting their ankle or breaking their neck, or worse yet, spilling their drink. So we're going to have those wired in too. So yeah, that's exciting to think of the next step. And once the deck part is done, then we will have the landscapers in to install a drain in our yard, and then prep it for landscaping. We also plan to have off this the deck itself. We're going to have an area of paved like pavers with a pergola, just to provide some shade on the outside of the area, and just have another sitting area. So yeah, it's getting exciting. It's we've been I think I mentioned we've never really ever had our backyard live up to its potential, and anxious to sort of create a little bit of a sanctuary back there with a little more privacy and greenery, and really use that space to its full advantage. With all that being said, it's been kind of I don't know, I've been out of sorts this past week or so. I think part of it's having my routine interrupted by having someone here every day working, and while it's good to see the progress, it just means that, yeah, it interrupts my routine, gives me a little less freedom to come and go because I have to be here. Once our friend comes to work, a couple times I've zipped out to the store for a little while, but I feel like I should be here, especially if he wants feedback on something, because it's sort of been, most of the time he works on his own, he knows what he's doing, but other times, he needs to know, do you want to do this or do you want it like that? And so yeah, been a bit on edge, I think, because of that. And then our son was away this last week and a half. He was house sitting for my sister and brother-in-law while they were on holiday. So that gave us a little bit of a break from having someone else in the house. It was funny. He came back yesterday and I was teasing him. I said, "So did you miss us?" And he's like, "Eh." "Did you miss me?" He went, "Eh." And it's a situation where it's not rough having him here, but it is another presence, and it's not terrible for him to live at home, but he is, not in his own space, and he is back with his parents. That can't be easy. So I know we're both Cameron and I and Matt are looking forward to when he's gone, and our garage is full of his stuff, so that's partly been a bit frustrating when you want to go in and find room for something. There isn't room. So for instance, we bought some outdoor furniture. It's all stacked in a spare bedroom, and it'll be nice when we have our space to ourselves again, even though it's not terrible having him here. And good news on that front, he actually did find a place. It's like a small townhouse, and last Saturday, actually, he came over and slapped a manila envelope on the table and said that I've got an offer that's been accepted. And so we're very excited about that. The financing's all been approved, and now he's just waiting for a home inspection before all the subjects come off. Having said that, there's a renter in the unit now, and so he has to wait until, I guess, once the subjects are off, the tenant has to be given 2 months' notice. So he won't be moving in probably till the fall, so he's not able to take possession quite as soon as he'd like, but it will be his home. It'll be his. Excuse me, just got that. And it's actually the unit 2 doors down from him is owned by a friend of his, and his friend is renting it out at the moment, but Matt has been in his friend's place a number of times. So when this came up, he was familiar with the building, knew what the units were like, and he was actually able. There was another unit in this complex. It's a very small complex, and very small townhouses, but big enough for him. And so there was another unit that was up for sale, and his agent after several attempts, hadn't gotten response from the selling agent. But then another unit came up for sale, and he was able to get it before it even went on the market. So that was handy, and he actually paid less than asking, which in today's market is very unusual. So it all seems to have worked out really well, and as soon as the last subject comes off, then it'll all be official. So good news on that end for sure. And then his birthday's on Monday, so a good going into his birthday on a high for sure. So although tomorrow, on a downer note, and maybe this is partly what's been going on with me without being conscious of it. Tomorrow is the 3rd anniversary of my dad's death, and so he's been on my mind, obviously, quite a bit more than usual. And well, always going up to our cabin, so that I associate with him quite a bit. We always miss him when we're there, but I also kind of feel like his presence is there, looking over us and being happy that we're taking care of things. But I sort of realized that that might be also what's playing with my mood a little bit. So yeah, that's unfortunately for Matt. My dad died the day before his birthday. And so I don't think he can ever go into his birthday quite the same way again, because it'll always have that bit of a tinge of sorrow to it, knowing that the day before marks that anniversary. But he's going over to his brother's tonight with getting together with some friends and celebrating his birthday tonight, because obviously it doesn't work so well on a weeknight to go and have a few drinks and celebrate if you have to get up for work the next day. So that's what they're doing tonight. And yeah, he's gonna be 31, so that's my middle one. And then Jessica's birthday's coming up next month. She'll be 33. So yeah, I guess that makes us older. That's okay. Better beats the alternative, right? So yeah, I guess that's about all I have to talk about today. I'm glad I was able to get the time to record, and given if all goes well today, hopefully not too many interruptions, I'll be able to edit and upload by the end of by this evening anyway, or by late afternoon. So yeah, not sure when I'll get another one in. It's all dependent, as I said before, on when I'm able to get the time these days. My routine is not normal anymore, and I just have to roll with it. Gets, as I said, I've been a little bit stressed over it. But I have to put it in perspective. It's a sort of a short-term pain for long-term gain, and in the scheme of things, I'm lucky to be in this situation. So it's been a bit hard too. My husband's had kind of some stress at work. He's been working more than normal, and so that too, I think we've been feeding off each other a little bit too, and unfortunately sometimes that causes a little tension, but all's good. We'll survive. Anyway, that's enough about all that. So have yourselves a great week. Thanks as always for watching, and as always for all your comments and feedback. I love hearing what you guys are up to. Please, I don't mention the Ravelry group very often. It's not a really active group, and I don't have a ton of time, or I choose not to take a ton of time to spend on Ravelry. Honestly, I'd rather be knitting than talking, or I guess I am talking about knitting here, but I don't spend a lot of time chit-chatting on Ravelry. Although if you comment, if you post anything in the group, I try and answer personally to every post. And I do enjoy that interaction. I used to be participate in a lot more groups, and I just have stepped away from that quite a bit in this last year or so. But I always enjoy seeing people posting in the Ravelry group, and encourage it. And I especially love when you post pictures of what you're making. I get to talk about what I'm doing, and you get to see it on a regular basis. But I highly encourage, please share your projects. I love to see them. And not just knitting. You can put anything, whether it be crochet or quilting or painting or stitchery or just about anything. Feel free to start any new threads, feel free to post in the What Are You Making thread or in the episode thread each week. So, yeah, please, love your feedback, love interacting with you. That's the best part of all of this, honestly. So, yeah, on that note, have a great week. Happy knitting, and I will talk to you hopefully soon. Bye.